Blood. It's at the center of everything within VRising, but do you truly understand its full potential? Hey there friends, it's Codiak here. Welcome back to Legacy Gaming. Today, we're breaking down one of the most consequential systems in the game, what Blood's best for you, and some tips that'll hopefully blow your mind. By now, you probably understand the basics, but just in case you don't, Blood is an essential system within VRising. It's essentially Thirst Plus, because while it's necessary to keeping you alive, it also provides some crazy good gameplay benefits. At the time of making this video, there are 6 blood types in the game, and while we do break them all down in our Wish I Knew Sooner tips and tricks video, which you should definitely check out, I think we need to go deeper to understand Blood's true value. Now those 6 blood types I mentioned are as follows: Brute, Creature, Rogue, Scholar, Warrior, and Worker. Now each blood buff serves a different purpose, but they aren't exactly created equal, so on top of breaking them down, let's also clarify their value to you as a player from a gameplay perspective by ranking them. Now as always when putting our opinions out there, I have to make sure it's crystal clear. These are our opinions. You can disagree, that's okay. Feel free to let me know in the comment section below. To be clear, I don't think there are any blood buffs within the game that are inherently bad, so don't expect me to really bury one here. But if there was a quote-unquote bad buff, it'd be Creature. It provides players with a slew of defensive bonuses like an increase to movement speed, an increase to sun resistance, damage reduction, and increased health regeneration. All valuable things, but if you consider the scope of the game and the other blood buffs that are available, it's not overly valuable. The best thing about a creature buff is the damage reduction, which can reach 20% if you max out the tier 3 in blood quality. But outside of that, I would say the remaining buffs hold no sway over the most important aspects of the game: fighting V-Blood units and, if applicable, PvP fights. You have to remember this is largely a PvP specific survival game, so I will be approaching most things with that in mind. Now it's no knock on you PvE players, but blood buffs come into the picture a lot more when you consider their PvP implications. You can make the argument that the increase to health regeneration is extremely valuable, and you'd be right, but because it's only accessible at the 4th tier, it means you need to find an incredibly high percentage creature before that becomes a factor. If you look at it from top to bottom with the mindset of getting the most out of a blood buff no matter the percentage, I'd say this is easily the least impactful in the game, and thus gets a C ranking. Next on our list is Brute Blood, and on paper, this is a really interesting set of buffs. When tapped into fully, a Brute Blood buff gives your primary attacks life leech, increases your primary attack speed as well as increases your gear level by 1, increases the healing you receive as well as gives you a small self-heal when dealing a killing blow, and the ability to gain a temporary speed and power buff that procs off your self-healing. Honestly, this is the most complicated buff in the game, and it's good, don't get me wrong, but it's not great. The real issue here is that most of these benefits fall under defensive boosts, and while that may vibe with certain players, as with most games, I'm of the mindset that the more I can do to boost my offensive capabilities, the better a position I'm in to be effective. You can always hone your skills, become a better player to reduce the amount of damage you take, because if you don't get hit or you get hit minimally, life leech doesn't really matter. Now there are some small offensive boosts in here, but at the end of the day, you have to compare those to what else is out there, and they don't stack up. Where I do think Brute Blood has some value is with players that do struggle with PvE and PvP, looking for a bit of a safety net. It's not going to be a huge game changer, especially in PvP, but it could and should make a difference in PvE, especially when you reach tiers 3 and beyond. The Brute Blood buff is interesting, no doubt, but sadly, it fails to rise above a C rank in the grand scheme of things. Rogue Blood takes a step beyond Brute Blood and gives the player more direct gameplay benefits. Rogue Blood gives weapon attacks an improved chance to crit, increases player movement speed, reduces the travel skill cooldown while also giving a guaranteed crit out of travel form, and finally augments crits to give them a chance to increase the damage a target takes for a short duration. On paper, this is a good set of buffs, with the 1st, 3rd, and 4th buffs really providing the most benefit. Movement speed, as we talked about with Creature Blood, is kind of a wash, and while it does help, it doesn't have a huge impact on gameplay. I have to give a shout out to the comment section because I'll admit I didn't fully understand the 3rd buff as it relates to the travel skill, but now, with that understanding, it completely changes my opinion of Rogue Blood. Long story short, when you use your spacebar ability, the first attack out of that will be a guaranteed crit. Additionally, you get some cooldown reduction, which means an easier time avoiding attacks and more damage. It's a win-win. On top of that, if your travel skill is one that creates a duplicate attack, that also gets a crit. So yeah, it's super good. The rogue buff, while not perfect, certainly has value, and that early crit chance buff is nice, and if you're lucky enough to get the ranks 3 and 4 buff, you're in some seriously good shape. Overall, the rogue blood is a solid option, and I should point out, abundant across VRising, which is why it's getting an A rank. Next on our list, we're jumping up quite a bit to the Scholar Blood. This one is pretty straightforward, increasing your spell power, reducing the cooldowns of spells, giving spells life leech, and giving spells a chance to reset on cast. There's nothing bad here, full stop, and if you make spells an integral part of your combat, then this could very well be your go-to blood buff. The only real drawback is that spells have cooldowns, and depending on what spells you use, those cooldowns can vary. What I will say about the Scholar Blood buff, it does a really nice job being applicable to both offensive and defensive spells. The increase to power works on both sides of the fence, and so does the cooldown reduction. The only thing that doesn't is the life leech, which honestly isn't that big of a deal. If you lean into a spell-based build, Scholar Blood is far and away the best blood you can tap into, but it really all comes down to how you play the game. With that in mind, a strong Scholar Blood buff with the right build is an incredibly powerful thing, which is why, at the end of the day, it's getting an S rank. When push comes to shove, only the warrior buff truly delivers across all categories. The buff is easily the best in the game when it comes to top-down viability, but let's make sure we all understand why. A warrior buff provides the following: an increase to physical power, a cooldown reduction on weapon skill, a damage reduction and damage buff increase when attacking a target while you're at full health, and the chance to parry an attack, reducing damage taken and increasing your damage output. So to break it all down, all 4 buffs are incredibly valuable. The real selling point here is the combination of strong offensive and defensive buffs. You're getting both with no strings attached. Melee combat, while not the highest single source means of damage, is still the most consistent form of attacking in the game. It's not tied to cooldowns, and physical power ties directly into your primary attack, as well as your 2 weapon skills. You're getting improvements across the spectrum while also getting some defensive enhancements as well. The third buff on the list is a bit hard to decipher, but what it's saying is when you're at full health, you're taking reduced damage and deal more damage. If you combine this with some of the abilities like Power Surge and Crimson Aegis, you can really make the most of this perk and capitalize on that damage buff, the thing we're really after. The warrior buff, hands down, is the best blood type in the game, which is why it's getting an S rank. Truth be told, I had to save Worker Blood for last, not because it's the best blood type top to bottom, but because it doesn't really fit squarely into the framework of what we're trying to break down in this video. Worker Blood is really good, but it's entirely designed around gathering resources, which is fine and exactly what you'd want or expect from something of this nature. A fully stacked Worker Blood buff, rank 5, gives you some incredible benefits, including an increase to resource yield, increased damage against resource objects, increased mount gallop speed, and a chance to instantly destroy nodes and trigger a burst of speed. Everything here is designed to make farming for resources better, and when you consider things like the Highland Lotus, one of the most valuable and rare resources in the game, something like a 30% increase to yield is a game changer. It means getting essential resources faster, shaving valuable time off your progression march. Ultimately, when all is said and done, you're only going to go after a worker buff when you're going out on a farming run and have no intention or desire to engage in combat. It's a great set of perks, but it is niche, which is why the Worker Blood buff receives a B rank on our list. All of the rankings aside, there's still one more thing we need to talk about in the context of this video: the prisoner system. We've already done a video breaking down the servant or thrall function within the game, but there's another side to that coin, one that we think is far more valuable to your entire team. Truth be told, there's a lot of small interesting systems within the game, so I don't blame you if you passed up checking out the prisoner system, but it's time to change that. At a high level, the prisoner system allows you to capture and contain any non-V-Blood human within the game. Now, when I first heard of this system, I really wasn't sold because I didn't think the effort was going to be worth the reward. Man, was I wrong. Here's the deal with the prisoner system. Unlike the act of feeding on them and killing a target out in the world, imprisoning a human allows you to drain their blood into a vial, getting a sample of that blood without killing them. Now, there is a way to mess this all up and risk losing a human, but if you're smart and careful, what you could end up with is a sustainable way to harvest 5 out of the 6 blood types creature excluded at will, While this is great, there are a few things you need to keep in mind when capturing a prisoner. First is their health. Each prisoner has a health bar, and you can use a variety of items like rats and fish to restore some of a prisoner's health. Obviously, the goal here is to keep them alive. On the other hand, you have to consider their misery, and this is interesting as it directly affects how much damage a prisoner takes when extracting blood or essence. The higher the misery, the more damage outlined in the tooltip the prisoner will take. To reduce misery, you need to feed them certain fish. Now, I'll be honest, fishing is one of my least favorite systems within VRising. It's pretty bland, and the actual mechanism is hard to understand, which isn't great, but it's essential in this application. As long as you balance a prisoner's health and misery, you can continually drain their blood, so long as you have glass vials. An important note, and this is the real magic here, whatever blood type and percentage that target has, that's exactly what you're going to get when extracting blood. Makes sense, right? So in reality, if you put in the time and the effort, you could have a prison system built within your castle that has 5 prisoners, one with 5 of the 6 major blood buffs, all at 100%, which means you have an endless selectable array of blood buffs that you can tap into at any time as a player or clan. That, my friends, is a big freaking deal. I hope now you understand and appreciate the importance of blood within VRising. However, if you do have any questions, you know what to do. Leave us a comment down below and we'll do our best to get back to you. Of course, if you did like this video, we need your help. Hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. It's still the single best way to help channels like ours reach new audiences. If you are interested in joining our VRising private server, consider joining us on Discord. We've got a great small PvP server with 2x resources set up for anyone to use. Just check out that link below and join today. Finally, if you like everything we're doing here on the channel and you want to support us even more, consider becoming a member. For just a few bucks, you're helping Livid and I achieve our dreams of becoming full-time content creators. Check out the join button below to learn more. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching and play on.